Okay, so I guess we should start, if everybody's okay. All right, welcome. Welcome to the all members meeting. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here with us today. And by the way, this is the first of the year, so imagine this is a great event that we're having for you today. So first of all, we hope that you and your family are safe and healthy. And I know that it has been difficult the last year, and even this year, we're just getting back to normal. Before we start, just a couple of logistics. This session is going to be recorded, okay? And we're later going to post it on, and we will let you know, okay? During the first part, we're going to have a couple of announcements, and then towards the middle, we're going to have the amazing interview that we're having with our Cecilia Aragon. Also, you're going to notice that all the microphones right now are muted. Okay, we will be able to unmute those towards the end. Please, if you have any questions throughout the interview, please raise any questions in the chat, and we are going to be covering those towards in the middle of the session and also towards the end. Okay, all right, so let's get started. So today we are featuring one of the Latinas in Computer co-founder, Dr. Cecilia Aragon. But before we talked about her, first we want to tell you a little bit about Latinas in Computing. We are a community created by and for Latinas in computing fields with a mission of promoting the presentation and success. Our members define key strategies to promote leadership and professional development among current and next generation of Latinas in technical roles. What is amazing about this group, we started way back in 2006. And this just started by a group of Latinas that got together in a birth of feather at Grace Hopper celebration of women in computing. Out of that, Latinas in Computing was born. We are also part of the Anita B Sister Affinity Group. So now I want to introduce you to the leadership team. Okay, these ladies that you see here are the co-chairs for Latinas in Computing. We have two new co-chairs that joined us this year. Dr. Alegria Vaquero from SADC. Alegria is a senior software engineer, and she has been working in the health tech space for 6 years now, and she's very much passionate about applications that impact important aspects of our lives, but also participating in the community like she is. Myself, Rokeya Kaplan. I work at Mercedes-Benz, and I've been with Latinas in Computing for a long time now. Another co-chair is Meridangela Gutierrez. Meridangela, she is a security consultant at Accenture. Meridangela, she's very passionate about volunteering and also helping in the community. Now, Luza Jaramillo, she's also co-chair, and Luza works for Electronic Arts. She's also the Latinity co-founder, which is our conference in South America. Now, the leadership teams here, we have the co-founders. Our co-founders, these are, believe me, it's a great privilege just to mention their names and to introduce each one of them. These women are talented, determined, passionate about giving back to their community, and who throughout their careers have achieved many accomplishments while still finding time to share the knowledge and support in the community. And believe me, I'm proof of that. I remember when I used to be very shy, but the Latinas in Computing were there for me. Many of them work in academia, industry, and in the government. And as you can see here, just to give you Hilda Garaton, she is one of the co-founders. She works at Intel. Dr. Patty Lopez as well. She's one of the co-founders, and she works at Intel. Now, Patty, she was in 2015 one of the SWE Advocating Women Engineer Award, and she also received an award in 2010 for HINET, which was for community service. She also served as the general co-chair for Grace Hopper in 2013. So imagine how proud we were when we saw a Latina, being the program general co-chair at Grace Hopper. And Dr. Cecilia Aragon, and she's going to be, of course, we're going to be interviewing her in a couple of minutes, so I won't talk much about her. Then we have Dr. Dimon da Silva. She is a distinguished member of the Association of Computer Machinery since 2011, and she works for Texas A&M University. Then we have Raquel Romano. Raquel, she has been recognized as one of the CNET 20 most influential Latinas as of 2014. Raquel, she's working right now for Threadroom. Another co-founder that didn't fit in this slide is Clarice Castillo. Clarice, she works for Homery Corporation, and she conducts research in distributed system, computational resource, virtualization management, and middleware development. Then we have Natalie here. Natalie, we have her here as the participant as well. Natalie, she is one of the co-founder of Latinity. Natalie also works for Una. Okay. Ruth Janus Boss, she's also a board member. She was our former co-chair last year, and now she's leading the South Florida Anita Bay affinity group. Jocelyn Simmons. Jocelyn, also, she is one of the co-founder of Latinity, and she works for La Universidad de Chile. And then we have Blanca Polo. Blanca, she recently joined our Latinas board member, and she works for the Leeward Community College. All right, so those are our leadership teams. And just moving forward, I just want to show you right now, we have now t-shirts, and those t-shirts now are available in our website at www.latinasinComputing.org. And I do have a picture of, I have it right here so that you can see it. Okay, so this is the t-shirt that we have. So you can order those, and hopefully for our Grace Hopper this year, you can order them. Okay. At the end, towards the end, we're going to have a raffle. So 2 lucky winners are going to go home with one of those t-shirts. So please stay tuned towards the end and don't leave the room. So next announcement before we start with the interview and the fireside chat. It's about our Grace Hopper registration. The registration is going to start, as you know, is from September 27th to October 1st. During that time, we basically have our Latinas in Technical Role session. We always have that every year at the conference. So we look forward with having you, meeting you at the Technical Role reception. By the way, don't forget to register. Registrations are already open. And also would like to thank Natasha Green from Anita B for supporting us with this presentation today. And next, I would like to introduce now Mary D'Angela. She's going to talk about now our volunteering opportunities.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We know that your time is very valuable. We have a couple of volunteering opportunities. We're looking for active members that want to contribute with new ideas, ways to create more activities and engagements and more our community, help with our social media, and also support or create a mentorship program. So if you have a little bit of time, the commitments will vary depending in your availability, but please sign up, register so that we can contact you after today's meeting and share with you additional opportunities, ways to engage, if you want to participate on a single event or a specific events such as Grace Hopper. Everyone is welcome. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the interview.
Hello, I'm Alegria, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to Cecilia. So first I want to give her short bio, but let me tell you that this was very, very difficult to make it short because she's so incredibly accomplished that I'm going to do my best, Cecilia. Dr. Cecilia Aragon, she earned her PhD in computer science from UC Berkeley in 2004. She's a professor in the Department of Human-Centered Design and Engineering at the University of Washington in Seattle. In 2016, she became the first Latina to be promoted to full professor in the College of Engineering at UW in its 100-year history. Cecilia is the recipient of the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers. Her major awards for research and her work at NASA designing software for Mars missions led President Obama to call her one of the top scientists and engineers in the country. She was also an airshow pilot, and in 1991, she was the first Latina to win a slot on the United States aerobatic team. She's worked with Nobel Prize winners and has taught astronauts to fly. In her new memoir, Flying Free, debuted on 5 bestseller list. Thank you, Cecilia, for joining us. So I want to kick it off by asking the following question. In your memoir, you talk about your childhood in a small town in Indiana as the daughter of immigrants. Can you tell us a little about your childhood and how your experience shaped your attitude towards the future?
Well, thank you, Alegria. I'm delighted to be here and honored to be a part of Latinas in Computing. So thank you for having me. However, when I started out as a young child, nobody would have thought that I would do anything or accomplish much in my future. I was extremely shy, never said a word in school, and I was fearful. I was afraid of just about everything. I had these strong fears about climbing a ladder or really anything, you name it. I mean, even really kind of obvious things, I was too afraid to do them. And so expectations for me as I grew up were pretty low. My teachers didn't really think much of me, and I had trouble with some of my classmates. Kind of, well, some of them looked down on me. So I grew up thinking as a child of immigrants that my life was going to be very narrow going forward.
It is a pretty heartbreaking story, and unfortunately, you know, one that it's often repeated about with many children of immigrants. And I'm happy to see how your career and your trajectory continued and show the world, you know, what you're capable of. But I want to keep talking about your story. And shortly after you started your PhD at UC Berkeley, you dropped out. What were the reasons, and what were the feelings that made you take this step?
Well, because as a child, I had received a lot of negative feedback from teachers and classmates. So I had one teacher who accused me of plagiarism when I wrote an essay that had, you know, relatively advanced vocabulary words in English, because my parents both spoke with thick accents, and they assumed that I couldn't possibly have done that by myself. And, you know, this teacher didn't mean to be cruel, but it was kind of like malnourishment, and those feelings of malnourishment can grow and can take root inside a child's, you know, heart and mentality. And I felt that I must be doing something wrong. I lacked confidence. I had, you know, classic imposter syndrome. I just did not think very much of myself. And so whenever something difficult happens, so for example, you know, it's challenging to get a PhD, as those of you who have accomplished PhDs, especially here in the US as a Latina, there are not many of us who've made it through the United States PhD gauntlet in computer science or any kind of computing field. And when I experienced this, I felt, you know what, I didn't think there was a problem with a hostile environment. I thought, oh, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm not good enough to do this. Perhaps my advisors are trying to be kind to me, but I'm really not going to make it. There is no reason I should be here. And of course, there were the people who said, oh, the only reason you got here is because of affirmative action. So when I started having trouble with my technical work, which is very normal because getting a PhD is hard. You have to do pretty advanced work. And I ran into difficulties. And instead of those difficulties inspiring me to do more and work harder, I turned it against myself and said, maybe I'm not good enough. And so I dropped out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, imposter syndrome is, it echoes in every stage of the careers, and it's very. I mean, for those who have gone to Grace Hopper, it's a topic that keeps coming and coming back again, right? So we haven't been, despite all the role models that we haven't been able to shake it off. I wanted to continue with the story of flying, which is so mind-blowing to me. And one of the main motivations that led you to become a pilot was overcoming fear, and this fear that you have been accumulating since childhood. Was flying a means to an end, or the end itself of a lifelong dream of flying?
Well, I did not expect I would ever be somebody who would learn to fly a small airplane. Nobody in my family did it. As a matter of fact, my parents both thought it was dangerous and that I shouldn't do it. And I didn't really know anyone in the town where I grew up who was a pilot. But what happened is, so one day after I had dropped out of school, I was working in software, and a colleague of mine said, how would you like to go for a ride in a small airplane? And my first thought was, I don't want to die. No. But then in that moment, as I was thinking about his offer, I realized I've been saying no to everything. I have been allowing my life to be ruled by fear and imposter syndrome and lack of self-confidence. I need to do something a little different, or my life is going to be really limited and really kind of boring. So I decided to just this once say yes. So I agreed, and my friend took me for a ride in a small plane over San Francisco Bay, and it was so beautiful. It was gorgeous. I still remember seeing the lights glittering on the bay like a million gold coins. And then we flew out over the Golden Gate Bridge, and the waves against the California cliffs looked like lace. And I thought, this is spectacularly beautiful and so rare and special. I have to have this in my life, even though I'm afraid. So when we got down on the ground, I signed up for flying lessons. But I was a terrible student. I still remember every time I would drive up to the Palo Alto airport, I would see the airplanes coming in for a landing, and I would kind of wish in my heart, oh, maybe the airplane will have a maintenance problem today, or maybe the instructor will be sick and I won't have to fly. But I still kept at it, because for me, the joy of flying was greater than the fear, because it was like a long-held childhood dream. Because when I was younger, I wanted to escape from my kind of miserable, fearful life, and I wanted to be magic. I wanted to soar among the treetops and just levitate and fly. And you know what? Flying in a small airplane was a lot like that magic. So I kept doing it, even though I was terrified. And so I think that kind of answers your question, that it was not really, it was sort of a means to an end, but it was also really this childhood dream. And it kind of ended up being everything for me. And learning to fly, although it really helped me overcome my fears and achieve other life goals, what it really did was, I mean, it kind of changed my life because it opened up all these other things that I had been doubting and I'd been afraid of. And I said, well, you know what? If I can fly, I can stand up in front of a group of people and give a talk. If I can fly, I can go back and do my PhD. You know, if I can point my airplane straight at the ground at 250 miles an hour, I can even apply for my dream job as a professor, even though 400 people are applying for one spot and I would never qualify for it because I'm not good enough, but I'm going to try anyway. So that's the wonderful thing. Once you face one of your fears, you can go on and face many others. And, you know, you don't have to, I don't think people have to learn to fly, but I think there's something in your life that is challenging to you or difficult, and you should go for that difficult moment. If being in a PhD program is really hard, if majoring in computer science is really hard, you should do it. You should do it even if it's hard, especially because it's hard, because you never know what it's going to open up for you.
That is true. And that's very inspiring. And it seems like after you did that, like all the barriers in your life, like just crumbled down. And to expand a little bit, and how did you become an instructor and later a member of the U.S. aerobatic team?
All right, so once I started deciding to face my fears, I just kept on moving forward. Flying was always difficult for me in the beginning, but I decided to keep going. So I wanted to get more ratings. I love teaching. Teaching is always something I've wanted to do, but I thought, teach other people to fly? I can't do that. What if the student puts the airplane into a spin or into something I can't recover from? But I decided to do it anyway, that I was going to push forward and keep exploring. And the way it worked is every day I would take a lesson, I would do another flight, just a little bit. I didn't say I'm going to become a member of the US aerobatic team. I mean, that was so far away from, I'm going to drive to the airport without throwing up. And each day I made one little effort, I got a little farther. And it's kind of, I mean, what I like, the analogy I like to use is it's like the proof by mathematical induction, which is a math trick that's kind of like the domino effect. It just says, if you knock over one domino, the next one will fall. And then that one tiny little step as the next domino falls and the next one, eventually it leads all the way to a place where you might never have dreamed of. And for me, I became a flight instructor. And then I realized, well, I'm really scared of being a flight instructor. So I need to take a 10-hour aerobatics course just to be a safer pilot. It's too terrifying to do it, but I can do it for 10 hours. So I went up with an instructor and I discovered I loved it. And so I had to keep going and keep learning it, even though it was terrifying. And as I kept going day by day by day, even though some days it was really hard to force myself to get into the airplane, it was really hard to be able to afford the money to pay for flying, because flying is an expensive hobby. But I did it bit by bit. I worked 2 jobs. I pushed forward, and I started flying in contests. And I started with very basic aerobatic contests, and gradually every day I got a little bit better until one day I competed at the national championships against the best pilots in the United States. And even though I was flying in a relatively inexpensive, underpowered airplane, it was sort of the underdog airplane, I made a spot. I won a spot on the United States aerobatics team, which is like the Olympics of aviation. And after that, I knew that nothing could stop me. I continued flying aerobatics. I represented my country, United States, at the World Aerobatic Championships. And one of my proudest moments is when my parents, who were naturalized citizens of the US, actually came to the World Championships and stood in the audience when I was on the podium receiving a medal and hearing the national anthem for the US. It was really amazing. So who knew that that timid, fearful child who couldn't speak could actually make her parents that proud.
That's incredible. That's amazing. And also for the parents of, immigrant parents, right? That aspire, these new lives and these old hopes and dreams for their children, and see, see their child get so far up is just amazing. So flying is an exemplification of performing under pressure. So in your book, you mentioned that aviation is unforgiving of carelessness. Given your experience, what is the best advice that you can give us to become better at performing under pressure? Of course, none of us are flying, but have, to some extent pressure in our work. What about if I don't present this well, or I deploy a bug? So, we want to be careful, but without appearing uncertain or insecure, but taking more risks without being reckless and negligent. So what is your advice?
So that is such a great point. And this is why flying is so good for pretty much everything else in life. I mean, so anything you do that terrifies you, but that you also love, whatever it is, I highly recommend taking on something like that, because the lesson you learn from performing even when you are afraid, I mean, it might be taking part in a play, or it might be skateboarding. It's really anything you love doing, but whatever you do that has an element of fear to it, whether it's, you might compete in a knitting contest. I mean, knitting is very peaceful, but maybe you enter your craft in a contest. I highly recommend doing that, because the more you practice stretching yourself and performing, the better you get at it. And I will say this, that for me, speaking in front of a group is one of the most terrifying things I can ever imagine. As a child, I would freeze. I could not speak in school. I would go for days without opening my mouth, even though I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to, see people. Sometimes my teachers would have me give a talk, and I couldn't open my mouth in school. But I wanted to do it. I just couldn't do it. So the process, it's the process of overcoming this anxiety by gradually taking small steps and setting myself up. So what I did as a child, I used to participate in plays, and I would memorize lines. I couldn't speak contemporaneously, but I could memorize lines and speak them in front of a group. And every day I did a little bit more. And so what I would encourage people who need to perform, who need to give a talk to their colleagues, who need to defend their programs, who need to explain their programs to the big boss, do practice. Do lots of practice talks, do them over and over again. Start out by reading and memorizing if that's the only way you can do it. I've had very shy students who needed to read their first talks. That's not ideal, but it's a good way to start. And then you gradually work your way up to speaking from notes, and then to speaking contemporaneously. And the important thing is, what you'll find, at least this is what I find, is whenever I'm doing something that's really terrifying, the days beforehand, I don't even want to think about it. I think maybe I'll get sick. I think maybe I'll have some excuse that I don't have to do this really scary thing. But I've signed up for it. Because I've signed up for it, I don't want to let people down. And so I go ahead and do it. And I think that daily practice and putting yourself, signing up for things, signing up for something that you know you're not going to like, that is going to stretch you, that's going to make you do something that might be a little more than you think you're capable of. That is so good, so helpful. Just sign up for it.
That's really great advice. And yes, getting little by little out of your comfort zone and taking incremental risks, right? To be more certain of yourself every time. Thank you, Cecilia. And please, to our public, our guests here, if you have any questions for Cecilia, please post it in the chat that we'll read it at the end or now if anybody has any question. In the meantime, I want to shift a little bit to your research or professorship career. How did you find the motivation to come back to UC Berkeley and finish your PhD in computer science?
So first of all, I knew I wanted to do research. I'd been working as a software developer and I had a lot of ideas, but I kept being told, well, without a PhD, you can't pursue those ideas. You can only work for somebody else doing their ideas. And I started thinking, at first I thought, well, I'm not good enough. And then I started saying, well, I think these are good ideas. I want to go back. So I had to figure out how to get back to school. Now it was hard because by this time I had 2 small children and I had a job and my family was dependent on my salary. So how was I going to go back to school when I needed to bring in a paycheck? My husband's salary wasn't enough. So what I did is I looked for scholarship programs and there was a program at NASA where I was working where after 5 years of employment, you could compete for a fellowship where they would pay your salary and let you go back to school. So I set this up. I spent a few years planning to apply for this. I made sure my boss really liked me. I worked really hard. I was a really good programmer. And I explained that I was interested in this program. And then when it came time, when I had my 5 years, he was enthusiastic and he supported me. And I won this award over a few hundred people. So that was really amazing. And what it did is it enabled me, with my lack of funds, to be able to go back to school and get paid my full salary. So that was an amazing program. Thank you, NASA, for allowing me to do that. So how did I find the motivation? Well, I was motivated because I think I already told you that I knew that I could become, before I thought a PhD was an impossible mountain that I would never climb. It was too hard for me. But I had gone from being afraid of flying to winning a spot on the US National Aerobatic Team and actually winning a medal for the country. So I thought, if I can do that, I can go back and get a PhD. And so when I had the fellowship, I reapplied to UC Berkeley, and it was a little challenging to get back in, but I did get readmitted, and I finished my PhD in a year and a half.
That is pretty amazing. That is pretty remarkable. And just to mention, how your mentor, people at NASA believed in you and supported you, is like, it reminds me how like having good allies, good sponsors is like really important, right? To find somebody who vouches for you and believes in you. And another question for you, and what advice would you give students that at different levels of their careers are feeling insecure and maybe debating whether continue their program or not, and how to make a very thorough analysis of whether, you know, shifting careers is the right decision, right? Like to know how to distinguish whether I'm changing because this is the most logical step for me, or am I changing because I'm afraid and that's what's stopping me?
What I have found is that it's almost always a bad decision to stop. That we're all very intelligent. We rationalize our decisions to quit. Oh, this is something that makes more sense for me now. So my advice would be keep going. You know, maybe what you do, I mean, you don't drop out of a computer science program. Maybe what you do is you find a different advisor, but you keep going. Don't drop out. It might be that your advisor is the wrong person for you. Maybe you need to shift your field within computer science. Maybe you were in security, you need to shift to programming languages, whatever. The point is, very often we delude ourselves into thinking it's the best decision for ourselves when it really is driven by fear. So my advice to just about everybody is keep going. You know, I really wish, you know, not one person told me when I was debating, I thought I was being really rational when I dropped out of my PhD program all those years before. I thought it was a completely rational decision. Oh, I'll make more money with a master's degree than I will with a PhD. And I don't know if I'll like research. So I thought it was very rational, but it was all fear. And I didn't admit it to myself. You know, I think a lot of us do that. Why are there so few Latinas who are professors in engineering? Do you know that there's 60,000 professors of engineering in the United States? And do you know how many are Latinas? Okay, less than 60. And only 10 of us were born in the US. Yeah, it's shocking, right? And the reason why are there so few born in the US when I thought it would be more difficult for foreign-born Latinas to, you know, to overcome cultural barriers and language barriers, but somehow, you know, you all do it. And I think it is because of that internalized, well, let's be honest, racism and sexism that those of us who grew up in the United States got exposed to, and we put it inside ourselves, and we do not even realize we're doing this. So when we think we're being rational about going from a more challenging career or a career that doesn't have a lot of women or Latinas in it, you know what? It's not rational. It's fear and our own internalized bias against ourselves. So keep going. I now tell all my students, you can do it. You can do it, because that is what it takes, just one voice. You know that when I was looking to drop out of my PhD program, none of my teachers, none of my classmates said, stay. You know what? If one person had said that, I would have stayed. So if a friend asks you, what should I do? Say, do it. We need more people like you in STEM fields. Keep going. We need women in STEM fields. We especially need Latinas in STEM fields. Keep going. Don't give up just because it's difficult. I'm repeating myself. What I'm saying is, don't think that you're making a rational decision. It's probably not. It's important.
Yeah, and also the sense of accomplishment of finishing something is like it's a pride that carries you forward for the next steps.
It really does. And when I look, this is one of the reasons that Latinas in computing is so wonderful, because so many of the women here have gotten their PhDs in computer science, and a lot of them have the same story, the identical story I do. I very much hope we'll do a series of talks with other amazing women in Latinas in computing, so that you can hear, I'm not special. I am not special. I was a nobody as a child. And I accomplished what I did just because I got some encouragement.
That's amazing. And very inspiring. And also, like, the need for role models in our community is incredibly important. I just want to remind everybody that if you have any questions for Cecilia, we're taking questions, so please write them in the chat. I want to talk in the meantime that questions arrive. Oh, here we have one. Do you have any, from Ruth, do you have any advice to integrate your personal life, like being a mom, and your work?
All right. So thank you for this wonderful question. So I have always worked while I was a mom, and I value people who choose to stay with their children. That's an incredibly important job. But I think you should be able to do both, to both work and take care of your children. And I do, and sometimes I felt like I wasn't, doing, I felt like I wasn't being a good enough mom. And I remember some of the parents in my child's school would bring these handmade cupcakes. And what would I do? I would buy stuff and bring them in. And one time I asked my daughter, I said, I was feeling really guilty. I said, do you think I did a good enough job taking care of you? And my daughter said something so wonderful to me. She said, sorry, I thought I turned my phone off, but my daughter said, you always were a role model for me. And if you had stayed home with me, what kind of a model would that have been for me going forward? How could you have gone to me and asked me to do both taking care of a child and being successful in a career? I wanted to do both. And she wanted to do both as well. And she said that by doing what I did, she always had someone to look up to. And that just was so wonderful.
It's amazing. Cecilia, really quick, because we're crunch time, but I want to really talk about Flying Free. You're the author of this amazing book, which I'm reading. And what inspired you to write it? And what are the learnings that you wanted the readers to walk away with?
So I wrote this book because I had students that were struggling, and they were struggling not because of ability, but because of lack of confidence. It's amazing how many people are really bright, but they think they're not good enough. They lack confidence in themselves. They doubt themselves. And I wanted to show with this book just how far I came, that I was, one of the problems I had when I would see role models, I would go to talks and they would all say, well, not all of them, but many of them would say things like, well, I just kind of fell into this. Somebody promoted me. Somebody gave me a hand up. And that's wonderful. But where I started from, I didn't think I was ever going to get a hand up. I felt that I had nothing and that I was nothing. And I want to show with the book that you could start from nothing, you could start from struggling, and you could accomplish a lot. And I also want to show that people, I was hoping to encourage people who were mentors to find one child in their life that they could reach out to and say, you can do it. You can do whatever you want, whatever it is. And I'm hoping that by writing the book, I could reach more people than I can just by being a professor at the University of Washington, which I love doing, and I love working with students one-on-one, but I don't have enough time to reach out to people one-on-one the way I would love to. I get 500 emails a day, and I often want to respond to people in detail. And now I feel I can say, well, now there's this book that is like me having a one-on-one conversation with you. I lay out all my frailties and weaknesses and where I struggled and where I got help. And I hope that this will show you there is a path forward for really anyone.
Yeah, it's amazing. And to be honest, now that I'm reading it, it's like I feel empowered, right? I don't think I'm ever going to fly, but I do send like transitively, you know, a lot of power, and of course a lot of admiration. Fatima, you have a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask, or I'm happy to read it for you? Well, I'm going to read Fatima's question. You've been the first Latina woman in so many spaces, from academic to aerobatic settings and beyond. Did these get easier over time?
All right, so I have to say the fear never really goes away. Sorry, I know I wanted to say it's once you do it once, it's all over and it's smooth sailing from then on. It's not really. But once you faced your fear, you realize, oh, I did it before, I can do it again. And so I don't doubt that I can get to the end now. I do get nervous, I do get scared, but I know I can do it. And that's really, so that is easier because I have that kind of vision that I can get to the end of the path. And I didn't have that before. So the other thing I do want to say is what I have found is that I have chosen the difficult path much of my life. Whenever I had an easy path and a hard path, I took the hard path. And my life has generally become easier. I mean, I used to struggle financially. Now, I mean, I'm not rich, but I do a lot better. I can take care of my kids. I can pay for college. There's a lot of things in my life that are much easier than if I had, well, I'll give just one quick anecdote. At one point, I actually thought about becoming a stay-at-home mom because I was scared of working. I mean, I told myself it's because I love my kids and I want to stay home and I know it's important work. But if I had done that, later on, my husband got very sick and lost his job. And if that had happened, my life would have become very difficult and my kids' lives would have become very difficult because as it was, our income was only cut in half instead of to zero. And because of having built up a good career, I was able to make sure my kids could still achieve their dreams. And that was really worth it. So choosing those difficult paths made it worthwhile for me in the future.
Thank you, Cecilia. There's one more question from Diana.
I love your name, Diana. That's my daughter's name.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
Diana, go ahead and ask your question.
Of course. So hi, Cecilia. I wanted to tell you that I just texted my fiance that I think I found like my future self in you, because I recently graduated my bachelor's in CS this year, and I always secretly, thank you. I always secretly wanted to learn how to fly a plane. I thought it was like something like, I don't know, like something you have to be a pilot and that's going to be a career. But I was like, I just want to do it for fun. And so I thought I think that what you said, everything re-inspired me to do something that I had find like challenging. So my question is just, how do you start into like learning how to fly a plane? Like, is there a certain program from a company you recommend or stuff like that?
So I'm going to give you the brief answer. There
Okay.
is more information in the book. I don't want to say buy my book. You can get it from a library. All right.
Oh,
If the
cool.
library doesn't have it, you can encourage them to get it. And believe me, I actually like that better than people buying a book, because libraries are for everybody. And I am a huge library fan. So, but the short answer is, you want to go to a small airport and don't find the big glitzy flight school that is probably going to overcharge you. Find somebody, maybe, you know, an older woman, maybe a pilot who loves it, not a really young person who is just trying to get an airline career. You want somebody who is teaching because they love flying, and they're usually part-time instructors. They're usually older, and they are usually on the low rent side of the field. All right, the airplanes that aren't as glittery, they don't have the big fancy, you know, learn to fly here. It's a smaller flying club. If you, as a matter of fact, where are you? What city?
I'm in Houston, Texas.
Okay. Oh boy, there is a great school near Houston, Texas. There's LaPorte, Texas. There's Harvey and Rhine Aviation, Harvey and RIHN. And they do aerobatic flying, but they also teach people to fly, and they're an amazing school and really nice people. I write about them in the book too. But yeah, that's my short advice on how.
Oh, thank you so much, Cecilia. And thank you so much for coming today. It was amazing. I literally found my future self in you.
You really made me happy today. You can do it. Don't ever let anyone stop you. Congrats on getting your CS degree, and you can learn to fly too and accomplish whatever you want.
Thank you.
Cecilia, I do want to close with this last question, because it's very relevant to us as a community. You are one of the co-founders of Latinas in Computing. And what was your motivation to start this organization? And what, in your perspective, is the value of belonging to these organizations?
All right. Thank you for this wonderful question. So I have loved Latinas in Computing ever since this small group of us, these other amazing women, technical Latinas, we got together, and there were not many of us. There were really not many of us, but we got together at Grace Hopper and suddenly found out we had so much in common. And you know, finding that somebody else feels the same way as you, like I didn't like making eye contact. I felt kind of shy. And all these other women were saying, oh yeah, me too. And you know what? The white women were saying, oh, you just have to do X. And I was like, how come I can't do this? Finding other people who had similar backgrounds to me was so empowering and wonderful and comforting. It felt like I was in a great big hug. And that is what really gave me courage to keep on, because even after, as I said, even after I got my PhD and accomplished all this, it's hard. I took one really hard job where I remember crying every day. And having my Latina friends to just get together and say, oh, everybody in my group is a white man and they all think I'm stupid. And just hearing support from other Latinas, so wonderful. It gave me emotional strength to keep going. And this is why I have tried really hard to keep Latinas in Computing going. I have volunteered my time. I have mentored others, and I've seen some of the students I've mentored become amazing and talented people and accomplish so much and go on to mentor other people. And so Latinas in Computing is probably the organization I love the most out of all the organizations I belong to. And so those of you who come here, you are really fortunate to be in this amazing group. I highly encourage you to participate, to give back, to volunteer, because that is how you will really get connected. It's one of the best ways to connect with mentors, actually, is to be an equal and to be volunteering alongside them. And this group has helped me move forward in my career and in my personal life.
Thank you, Cecilia. 1 minute answer because I want to read Jocelyn's question, and then guys, please stay a little bit because we have the raffle of the t-shirt. Jocelyn asks, thoughts on how to avoid being the token Latina in university company diversity efforts? That's a good one.
That's a great question. Well, so I was the first Latina full professor in the College of Engineering at the University of Washington. So you might say, well, was I a token? I don't think I was a token because I actually had to fight. I was denied for kind of an absurd reason the first time, and I refused to accept it. I appealed and made it through. So my promotion case was approved. And then 2 or 3 years later, another Latina became a full professor in the College of Engineering, and hopefully there's going to be a few more. So that's how I avoid being a token. If I get there and I'm the first one, I try to reach out to others like me and bring them on board as well.
So upwards mobility, help everybody forward.
Help everybody else. You know, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's a cliche, but it's really true that the more people like me succeed, the more we all succeed. It's not a competition. We all help each other and we all do better. So
yeah, a network, and keep our network live and useful for everybody.
yes.
Cecilia, thank you so much. This was so wonderful. You're so inspiring, and thank you for sharing this amazing journey with us.
Thank you, Alegria. It was such a joy.
Thank you, Cecilia.
And thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you, Cecilia. So once announcement, please follow us in our social media. We have our website, our LinkedIn group, our Facebook group, our Twitter account, and our mailing list. Please sign up because we want to do more events. And lastly, Mary, if you want to give the results.
Can we go? Sure. We have 2 winners. And of course, we use an app to raffle this. The first winner is Fatima Ali. Bravo.
Good job, Fatima.
From UIC. We'll be sending you an email to obtain more details on how we can send you the t-shirt. And second is Marisa Yanez. Marisa, are you still in the call?
Are you here? Yes, she is. Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you see, Cecilia encouraged us to go again, to push us into any direction that we really want to. Back to you, Mirkeya.
Well, I just have to say how amazing this interview was. I'm sure everybody was inspired, and now you feel like, yes, you have this power. Just remember, we are here to support you. Please join our mailing list. Follow us in Twitter at Latinas Inc. Also follow us in LinkedIn as well as in our website. So thank you so much for having us, and we look forward to seeing you in our Grace Hopper Technical Roles reception. So don't forget about that. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Cecilia.